Have you thought about a career in the whiskey industry? I'm not talking about being the next master distiller, but if you want a leg up on the competition, you need to take a look at the Distilled Spirits Business Certificate from the University of Louisville. This 30-week program will prepare you for the business side of the spirits industry, like finance, marketing, and operations. This is 100% online, meaning you can access the classes at any time and anywhere. So what are you waiting for? Get signed up to make your next career move at business.louisville.edu/online spirits.
All right, David, you want to give me some, I don't know, just tell me what you had for breakfast this morning.
Protein shake.
Protein shake. You sound,
We're just testing, right?
Yeah, you sound healthier than me.
When you're surrounded by bourbon in a restaurant, you really got to be careful.
Hey everyone, it is episode 218 of Bourbon Pursuit. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny, and as usual, let's hit some news. Barrel Craft Spirits, you know Joe, you hear him on the podcast all the time. They have announced the first ever Barrel American Vatted Malt. It's a blend of exclusively American single malt whiskeys, which we've actually become quite big fans of single malts on the show recently. And Barrel has partnered with small and large producers across the country to select whiskeys that express the full diversity of American terroir and style. This release was years in the making, and as many of the components in the blend come from emerging distilleries that have never traded or sold bulk whiskey on the market before. And this is coming from Joe, who you've heard on plenty of times, as we said before. In addition to expanding our ever-growing portfolio of spirits, this new project is also an important step in advancing our vision in the next chapter of whiskey in America. We'd love to hear your reviews and your thoughts on it, so make sure you comment and let us know. Now, Smooth Ambler is relaunching their Old Scout brand. This is the same brand that we all knew about when it was sourced from MGP, and now this is the new return of an MGP product. It is now a 5-year-old MGP bourbon and will be bottled at 99 proof and widely available in the US starting in the fall of 2019. We have a Whiskey Quickie where we review the new Old Scout that will be published here in just a few short weeks. The NAWR, or the National Association of Wine Retailers, has put out an article stating that after the Tennessee Wine Supreme Court case ruling that we've talked about so much on this podcast, is saying that there are 21 states in violation of the Constitution. Wine shipping laws in these 21 states violate the Commerce Clause, with their bans on wine shipments from out-of-state wine retailers. The case mandates that states may not pass protectionist laws that discriminate against out-of-state wine stores and retailers by banning them from shipping wine to consumers. Now, lawsuits have been challenging these bans on wine shipments from out of states are now underway in Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, New Jersey, and Texas. The remaining states with unconstitutional wine shipping laws are California, Idaho, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Washington State. Lawmakers in the other 14 states that we just mentioned need to take it upon themselves to start fixing their shipping laws. You can read this article in our show notes. Now, today's podcast wasn't intended to air for quite some time. David Mandell had previously been a guest on the podcast way back on episode 19, and as Ryan would say, that's when we sucked. But this past week, I saw Bardstown Bourbon Company's Instagram that there had been a leadership change. David is taking a step back, and they've hired a new president and CEO, Mark Irwin. Irwin actually was part of the Bardstown Bourbon Company and was part of their board earlier this year, and he comes from a long history in the U.S. Army and investments groups. Now, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of time to talk about more about Mark in the future, but this podcast is all about David, and it's been a pleasure to watch him spearhead this movement from years ago into what Bardstown Bourbon Company is today. The growth of this company has been tremendous, and you're going to hear about it relatively shortly, as well as some of the new product offerings. However, it looks like David wanted to go out with a blast because today also marks the grand opening of the new visitor experience at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. The expansive development includes curated tours, cocktail classes, exclusive tastings, and multiple private event spaces. Guests can choose from multiple levels of experiences, including the main event, which is a 1-hour fully immersive tour, and the Bardstown Bourbon Company's Best, which is a top-tier 90-minute tour featuring sensory exercises, cocktails, and a personal tour given by the master distiller, Steve Nally. The sensory exercises will allow visitors the opportunity to examine distillate, taste how bourbon ages, and learn how it is used in finished products. The tours will showcase Bardstown Bourbon Company's experimental distilling process of 40 mash bills for over 24 customers. Guests will also be able to enjoy the Visitor Center, which is adjacent to the Rick House Tasting Bar, which is also surrounded by stacks and rows of Kentucky bourbon barrels, where they will thieve whiskey straight from the barrel. Visitors, you can book your online experience right now on bardstownbourbon.com, and you can read more about all this in our show notes. All right, let's kick off the show. Let's hear from Joe over at Barrel Bourbon, and then you've got Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Hi, this is Joe from Barrel Bourbon. Tasting whiskey straight from the barrel was truly a life-changing moment for me. In 2013, I launched Barrel Craft Spirits so everyone could have the experience of tasting whiskey at cask strength. Use our store locator to find a retailer or bar near you at barrelbourbon.com.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have caught me in a story where I did a live tasting, and I was testing the New Orleans glass versus the Glencairn. Obviously, this is something very unique. You cannot really do a tasting objectively because you're touching the glass. You have a feeling of what it should taste like, and inherently, you're going to like how one glass looks more than the other. So what I did was I blindfolded myself with a bandana, and I had someone pour the whiskey in my mouth. Now, this is going to sound weird, but I actually could not tell which glass was which by the way it was touching my lips. At least initially. When Jessica did it a second time, she crammed the glass of my upper lip. So thankfully, I did not cut my lip. Anyway, the results were really fascinating to me in that I liked the Glencairn more because it gave me more surface area coverage on my tongue. Whereas the New Orleans glass, which is very, very nice looking, it came in like a direct point onto my palate, like a bead, shooting onto the palate. And I would have to work to get the whiskey all over the place. Now, this is good and bad. It's good if you are a whiskey that you're trying to mask how you feel in different parts of the tongue because you're going in a very narrow trajectory. And it's bad if you're like me and you're trying to be analytical of the whiskey because you're not getting the full surface coverage that you want. Now, on the aromatic side, I also noticed that the New Orleans glass only offered up, some of the more prominent notes. It wouldn't let me really assess the spirit as much as the Glencairn. And what I mean by that is that with the Glencairn, I got layers of the aromatic properties. I could tell what the various notes were and what they smell like. With the New Orleans, I got one note and then a bunch of little bitty other ones, but I could not really discern what some of those other little bitty ones were. Now, some of this may be, I typically drink with the Glencairn, so I'm more used to how that hits my nose. So preference definitely comes into here. But I'm asked all the time, what glass should you use? And it really all depends on the moment. You can drink bourbon out of a solo cup, and it would be great if you're with your buddies. So I would say, let's not focus so much on things like the glassware, and let's focus more about who we're drinking it with. Now, if you're being analytical and you're wanting to do these blind tastings, you need to have a consistent glass. But if it's just hanging out with your buddies, your old college friends, the glass doesn't matter. The company does. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, if you want to catch my Instagram stories, make sure you're following me on Instagram. It's at Fred Minnick. Again, at Fred Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny here today, riding solo as we are at Bardstown Bourbon Company, and this is talking to a guest that you may have heard a long, long time ago. This was back on episode 19. This is when we were starting to break ground, when they were starting to break ground. It was quite a while ago, so the journey on both ends has been explosive in growth, which is fantastic to see on both sides of the table here. And if you hear some clinging, some silverware going on, it's because we're in their main restaurant here, and you're going to hear more about that, more about really what's happened here, what are the big plans for everything that's going on, more as we start diving down this path. So today on the show, I have David Mandell. You might have remembered from back on episode 19. He is the president, CEO, and one of the co-founders of Bardstown Bourbon Company. So David, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kenny. I'll tell you, it's remarkable because when you think back to episode 19, where we're sitting right here, none of this existed. And we had an empty room, and we were just getting up and running, and it really is incredible. And I just want to congratulate you on your tremendous growth. I think you guys are the leading bourbon podcast out there, aren't you?
Well, we are, and thank you so much for saying that. We've gone through a lot of growth as well. I mean, like I was saying we started this. We were episode 19. Like, we do these every week, and I was thinking, like, holy crap, that's years ago. And I was thinking of, like, wait, you guys didn't even put a shovel in the ground yet when we started talking about this. This was all just like press release. It was a pie in the sky kind of idea, and like, how are we going to execute on this thing?
God, that is right. I mean, you were here. That was before we actually even had the building finished. So that's tremendous. Mm-hmm. That's tremendous.
Yeah. So I guess a few years later, how's it going?
Well, I mean, you look around here, it's unbelievable. I mean, oftentimes we sit back and we say, how did we do this? And I'll tell you, it's going incredibly well. Since that day, more than 3 years ago now, we have built one of the largest distilleries in the country. We do custom whiskey production now for 24 different companies. We'll do 40 different mash bills. We have probably one of the most sophisticated whiskey distilleries in the world. We've built an award-winning restaurant and bar here in the middle of the facility. We're opening a visitor center and an experience. We've got some really aggressive plans for bottling and a hotel coming, and we could not be more excited.
Holy smokes. That's a lot of stuff going on.
That's a lot of stuff.
So, I mean, I remember, if I remember one of the first things that we even talked about, or maybe it was like it was a rumor that even said, I was like, even before like the doors were opened, you all had basically contracted out. I mean, because let's also make sure we set the precedent that the goal of what Bardstown Bourbon Company is that you are a large contract distiller for anybody that wants to come and make their own bourbon, right?
Yeah, and I'll put a little bit of a twist on that, because what is interesting is we're a celebration of the entire craft of making whiskey. So we bring everybody together here, distillers, enthusiasts, lovers, and the community. And we do that in our collaborative distilling program, in the restaurant and bar. As you can see around you, we serve everybody's products, and you find ours through the lens of everybody else. And we're really about that. But when you go back to we call it the collaborative distilling program, because I'd make a distinction between that and custom. It is a exclusive program. If you're accepted into it, you then get the ability to have us showcase your product. If you look, we sell everything from Jefferson's to Kentucky Owl to many of the companies that we produce for. They're integrated into our cocktail menu. Then they can bring their guests, the distributors, the retailers here. This is their home. So it is a bit different. But you're right. Before we opened our doors, we sold out the first 25,000 barrel capacity of the distillery. We expanded to 50,000 barrels 6 months later, then 130,000 barrels about 6 months after that. And we have almost all of that effectively under contract for the next 5 years. It's been a remarkable program.
I mean, it just goes to show you like how big this boom is really getting, that everybody really wants to get into this action, because, yeah, I mean, like that's an incredible number of whiskey that you all are producing, and people are saying, yes, I want to gobble this up. Like, I want to be a part of this. So where is like the, so I mean, those are impressive numbers to begin with, right? Of kind of like how it was and how it was all contracted out. I guess kind of give the rundown if I'm Joe Schmo and I'm like, hey, I'm ready to do this. I really want to get into the whiskey game. Mm-hmm. Do they call, hey, David, heard you on the podcast. Like, what's the next step we take here?
So the answer to that one is going to be, we're probably not the right provider for you. So we get a lot of those calls. We get them every day. But I think, the beauty of our program is that we produce for great brands. So one of the primary considerations if you know to even be considered is you've got to have a great brand and it's got to be on the market. And you've got to be a company that has been in the industry. That's who we focus on. That's why we only produce for 24 different companies right now. We've turned away over the last several years, more than obviously that we've accepted. We get those calls every day. There are many options still out there for people like that, that want to get in the business, have never been in it before. They're much smaller options. We're not the option for them. But what's been most exciting for us is how we have really changed the whole kind of dynamic and landscape of the contract whiskey production market, and it's that program, and it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, I mean it's fun, right? Because other than you all, like there's only like a few places where you could go and do something like this.
Let me tell you what I think is one of the most exciting things about it. When you look at what happens in that distillery, we bring together, of those 24 companies we have, massive companies, and we have some small craft distilleries and a number of them in the middle. They're all working together with us there. We've got their teams coming in, and we're learning every day. They're learning, we're learning. We're pushing innovation, we're balancing art and science, but we're pushing innovation. It's all happening in there. We're sharing best practices, and that's making our team better. And the result of all of that is now coming out in our brands. So we're taking all that knowledge that we have created in a short period of time, doing a lot of innovation, and you're seeing that now come forward in our brands. That's never going away. The collaborative distilling program is a core piece of who we are. It's something that will drive innovation, has us pushing the edge all the time. But that's really one of the most interesting, I think, and exciting pieces of what's happening here is by having everybody work together. You've never had that before in the whiskey industry in one place.
Absolutely. Most of the time it's like, hey, David, here's the mash bill I want, go make it.
Well, and even more than that, what you had in the past was you had effectively, a couple of companies. You had one where you got to choose one of 3 different mash bills, and you got it. Great whiskey, great bourbon, but there wasn't a lot of choice. Or you had, another large distiller producing for you, and the problems you had there is you didn't get great customer service. You were kind of seen as, we're selling extra capacity. In other cases, it was kind of behind the scenes. You didn't really want to talk about it. In some cases, you were not allowed to talk about it. And we were the first to really embrace this kind of production and say, we want to do it. We want to be proud of it. We're going to put it out there. It's going to be about transparency. And everything now that we drive with our customers is full transparency. Access to the data in real time, chemistries. We just put in a system called Ignition that is used primarily in the food manufacturing business. It gives complete historian and transparency at every stage of the production, and the customer gets to watch it in real time.
It's kind of like
really powerful.
What is it? Is it Volkswagen or BMW? Somebody where like you buy a car, like you can brand new, you can actually go to Europe or Germany and actually like watch it as it's made down the line.
It's essentially the same thing. They get a portal. They can watch their production. They can see their barrels in the warehouse. We just implemented it in this last upgrade of the distillery when we just came off of shutdown a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It's really, really neat. Really neat software.
I was about to say, do people get like push notifications like an app, like it's Domino's delivery or something?
You do. That's what
really.
My gosh! So what's really crazy about it is it's extremely user friendly. John Hargrove and Steve Nally can access the distillery from their phone at home. They can see it and they can control it. So Sierra Nevada, Coca-Cola, a number of very large companies are using this platform, and it is amazing because the data that comes out of it and the control of the system and the transparency, it also feeds into your financial software. It's really, really powerful. Something that people could totally geek out on.
Yeah, so let's keep going down this path because as the business side of it, like what more value do you think that you get out of this by being able to give the power to Steve and John and be able to be able to do that?
So it goes even one level beyond. So we're giving not only this power to Steve and John, but we're handing that power to our customer. And so that is really our partners in the collaborative distilling program. Never before have they been able to watch their production in real time. You're getting the chemistries on each fermenter in real time as it's taking place. You're able to see it. You're able to, work with us. If there's something that, you see that's wrong or is out of line, you can make immediate changes, to production. But that kind of transparency and that kind of data is really valuable for the consumer when they're used to an industry here. Again, when you talk about traditional contract whiskey production, you had no transparency. You had no data. You got what you got, and that was it. If you didn't like it, too bad. And that was the attitude. Don't tell me how to make bourbon. I know how to make bourbon. Well, what if the customer doesn't like it? So we're gonna make it, and we're gonna get it exactly right under your specifications because you're our partner. That's what we do. And so it's been very neat. When you talk about 40 different mash bills in one facility, most facilities are 1 to 5, maybe 2 to 3. So it's really neat what's happening in there.
Now it's making me think of remember Willy Wonka, and he was trying to put a candy bar through the television.
Yes.
Now it's if you get whiskey, just be sample it through the app.
Exactly.
You can get a part of that.
Hey, if we could figure out how you could drink the product out of your smartphone, that would change social media advertising.
It would change that. It might be a whole new business venture.
Yes.
let's just get out of this. We're gonna do whiskey by the phone.
That's right. That's right. No, but it is really neat. And then when you carry over what is taking place there, and then when we built the restaurant and the bar here, when we invested tremendously in terms of bringing incredible talent here. We've got Chef Felix Mazzo from the Greenbrier, Chef John Castro, who just joined us, who ran Sullivan's Culinary Institute in Louisville. Incredible background. He is in charge of all of our culinary. Dan Calloway on our beverage team, who ran DECA and built an incredible team. What happened is organically, they started working together with the distillery, and that is how we got here to our products. And so it's no longer just about one singular person making decisions about a product. It's about a team of experts, beverage, culinary, and distilling, creating these very unique blends and bringing lots of different perspectives and pushing innovation. And that's one, I think of everything right now, that's one of the things that we're most proud and most excited about where we're headed there on our own brand.
Yeah, before we touch on these brands, because I think that's going to be a very big part of this, talk about what it meant to actually build Bottle and Bond Kitchen here. Because, you think about Bardstown, there's something that is missing, right? There is... You can go to Mammy's. There's nothing wrong with Mammy's, right? But there's definitely that sort of finer dining experience that was really missing. So why create this large place where people can come and eat and have a really, really good meal rather than just hey, we're going to serve sandwiches out of the back of a truck over here?
Well, I'll tell you. So again, like everything, I'd love to say that, we had, full clarity of this vision when we walked into this. But when you get into the business and you start going, it's an evolutionary process. And so, for example, with this, we like to say, the distillery is our heart, Bottle and Bond is the soul, of us. And so it really kind of brings together everybody. But if you back up to 2017, you weren't allowed under Kentucky law, late 2016, you weren't able to sell by the drink. So we worked with the state legislature, we got sell by the drink passed, we got vintage whiskey passed, and that changed everything. And we had not yet built this out at that point. So we stepped back and we said, now that we can actually sell cocktails in the distillery, let's look at doing a full restaurant and full bar. And let's really complete this whole idea of the Napa Valley destination experience. And so, like everything else here, we launched into it without having the history and the perspective of the industry. So we did something completely different. And we worked with the community, and we built something that I think really remarkably balances the visitor on the trail coming in and the community member of Bardstown. And what do I mean by that? That's everything from food style to pricing, to having a place where people can come and just enjoy. It's not pretentious. It's a high level of style and service, but you can come in here, you can spend $30 for a bottle of wine, you can spend $1,000. You can have a $4 pour whiskey, you can have a $2,500 pour whiskey. You can come in and have a meal that is comparable in price to Chili's, and to Cracker Barrel, but you're getting fresh food, scratch made, local ingredients, and that's the goal, is to bring everyone together, and it's worked. It really has worked.
Yeah, I mean, I've dined here a few times, and it's always fun to do that. I mean, there's You had mentioned, and I think that's one of the things that I think Bardstown was really key and missing as well, was having that sort of experience where you can have this sort of like elevated dining experience where it is good. It's good food. I mean, and I'm from Louisville. We've got massive amount of restaurants around us and good places to eat, but like, yeah, Bardstown was really missing some of that key ingredient.
They were, and the community is so supportive. And they are so proud of what we're doing out here.
I know Ryan's going to kill me too because he's from Bardstown. He's going to be like, quit shitting on my hometown.
And it's great. And because, we're very proud to be here. We've all moved here. We've moved, probably 20 people here, of our team that have come from all over the country here and settled here to build this great company. But, what I'd say is we're creating what I would call, and we call, the modern bourbon experience. And what is that? It's no longer just about drinking bourbon just straight all day long, going through a formulaic tour and tasting. When do you want to have these types of products? When do you want to enjoy them? A lot of times it's going to be over a great setting or a meal. You're going to want to have cocktails. You're going to be sitting outside. You're going to want to enjoy them along with a great culinary experience, because that's a lot about the fun of having great high quality alcohol products. And so it's not about overconsumption. It's about good, responsible consumption of better products. And so, and that's where the trends are going. And people want to see, they want to know everything about their products. They want to know where they're from. They want an experience. And that's what you get here. And that's what this is.
So let's talk more about the business side here, because I think you bring up something relatively like a good point about finding and moving 20 people here, at least 20 people, and finding the right kind of staff. Kind of talk about like how that search really went, and John and Steve, like, they're great guys. We know them, like, they've been in the industry for a while, but like, talk about everything else that goes into this, from the marketing, the promotional, the restaurant, everything like that, to find the right staff and really what it takes to look outside of just the local area of Bardstown.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, I think, at the end of the day, the story of this company is the story of the people that have come together here to build this. You have all this fancy equipment, all this great furniture, but it is the people and the culture and what we have created here, and it starts from the top at my level and it goes all the way on down. And we have focused on building the best team from the day that we got here. And we knew, myself, Garnett Black, who was our Executive Vice President of Hospitality, Dan Lind, our CFO and COO, our Chairman, Peter Lofton, we had to make sure we were here. And so we moved here and we started the company. But when you get into each piece, every piece is different. So in the restaurant, for example, we have a program with the State Department, J1 program, where we bring in 20 culinary students from South Africa, India, and the Philippines. We house them in 4 different locations.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we provide transportation, educational program. They stay with us a year. An amazing program. We're in our 2nd class now of students, because the culinary talent is just not here locally. We then supplement that too with as much as we can get from the community. Our beverage team comes from all over. Many of them moved from Louisville, from some of the best places there. But we try to recruit the best people we can and show them what the opportunity is here and to be part of something really exciting.
Yeah.
We've done it across every aspect of the business. So you have to make those investments, and you have to invest in the people and create the right culture in order to do what we're doing. That's in our opinion.
Is the mayor of Bardstown shaking your hand yet? like thank you for bringing in more people and business.
We're at about 120 employees. We've had very, very fast growth. We're hiring at least another 20 more here in the next couple of weeks. We're opening the visitors experience here. We're just a couple weeks away from that. The warehouse bar. We have a 2nd kitchen that has just gone in that's triple the size of this, that's going to be covering all of our catering and event opportunities here. So there is so much and a lot of hiring. We work closely with the city. We work closely with economic development. We work closely with the Chamber of Commerce in both Louisville and in Nelson County to really help attract the folks. And we're very invested in it, and we think ultimately all of this investment, you look at Heaven Hill, $65 million facility down the street, you've got $2.3 billion over the next 8 to 10 years in investment projects in bourbon, a lot of it hospitality. Mm-hmm. It's coming. We're going to attract the talent here. It's going to be great for the state, and it's going to be great for the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's no shortage of the money that's getting pumped into this, and it sounds like you all, I mean, as like, you know, starting this business and starting another business, I know that it's hard to sit there and be like, all right, we're not going to see return for a little bit. Let's keep pumping money into it until we start, you know, figuring out, finding our groove. So like, where do you all see the end of like the investing into the business until you can sit back?
I mean, I don't think any good business, you're never stopping the investment. I mean, especially when you're doing something, you know, as you know, innovative like we are in cutting edge, you're constantly pushing the boundaries here. And I think that's one of the things that really is exciting is we've got a very nimble team. We can move quickly. We see opportunities. We go after them, whether they're on, you know, on all of this, even just down to the brand side, pushing innovation, creating very interesting collaborations, testing, trying. Not everything works, but you've got to be bold enough to give everybody, especially the folks on your team, the freedom to run, and to, you know, you have a good vision set out, you've got good people, you've got a nice structure, and you give people the freedom to create, and you have the right folks on board, these amazing things can happen. And that's how we've done this in 3 years. And that's the story of it.
Well, it seems from you know, from your level that you're giving them the freedom and flexibility to go and try things, right? Because it's tough to be able to say like, hey, let's go experiment, let's do these things, when we know that we've got to do a lot of things right to be able to make sure that we're pushing the boundary. Our first things out there are going to be home runs, stuff like that too. I mean, it's hard to have that experimental mentality.
Well, it's like a lot of things. I mean, you can overthink things, and you know, you can overtest things, but the real test doesn't come until you put it in front of the consumer. So you can plan, test, tweak, but until you take this and you stick it in front of the consumer and you find out, do they like this? Do they love the fact that we have complete transparency on the label? How are they going to react to that? Well, the consumer really likes it. Are you going to like these unique finishings where we're taking different companies and we're pushing the envelope on some of these types of finishings with bourbon? You don't know until you put them out there. But I think one of the most interesting things is having Bottle and Bond Kitchen and Bar in the middle of the facility is like having a laboratory with the consumer. So every day we're experimenting and we're getting direct feedback. So this is like our focus group test. Mm-hmm. You create it, you put it out there.
What better way to do it, right?
That's it. I mean, you're right here. You have an audience that comes in here every single day from all over the world, and we're able to try with them lots of different things. We're able to get feedback. We're able to test. So we're getting it in real time from consumers, and it's another very interesting component of the business that you wouldn't necessarily think about, you know, how you would use that when you first coming up with the idea.
So thinking of ideas and kind of rolling back, and I can't even remember everything we talked about back on episode 19. It was so long ago, but kind of what was the idea of you even wanting to get into this and wanting to do this? The 2019 Kentucky's Edge Bourbon Conference and Festival pairs all things Kentucky with bourbon. It takes place October 4th and 5th at venues throughout Covington and Newport, Kentucky. Kentucky's Edge features a bourbon conference, music, tastings, pairings, tours, and an artisan market. Kentucky's Edge 2019 is where bourbon begins. Tickets and information can be found online at kentuckysedge.com. There are more craft distilleries popping up around the country now more than ever before. So how do you find out the best stories and the best flavors? Rack House Whiskey Club is a Whiskey of the Month club, and they're on a mission to uncover the best flavors and stories that craft distilleries across the U.S. have to offer. Along with 2 bottles of hard-to-find whiskey, Rack House's boxes are full of cool merchandise that they ship out every 2 months to members in 40 states. In Rack House's June box, they're featuring a distillery that claims to be the first distillery to stout a whiskey. Rack House Whiskey Club is shipping out 2 bottles from there, including its Beer Barrel Bourbon and Beer Barrel Rye, both of which were finished in barrels that were once used to mature America's #1 selling bourbon barrel-aged stout. And if you're a beer guy like me, you would know that's New Holland's Dragon Milk. Go to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com to check it out and try a bottle of Beer Barrel Bourbon and Beer Barrel Rye. Use code PURSUIT for $25 off your first box. What was the idea of you even wanting to get into this and wanting to do this?
You know, we had been in the spirits business before, and we had a vodka company in the early 2000s, and we learned a lot about.
Who's we, by the way?
Myself, Dan Lind, who's our CFO and COO, and Garnett Black, who is our Executive Vice President of Hospitality. We had started this vodka company, and we sold that in 2009, and we stayed in the business, and we did a lot of work with lots of different companies in the spirit space, and we connected over that period of time with our chairman and main investor in the company, Peter Lofton, and we all sat down and we had this vision for creating something in bourbon. We saw where the market was going, and we wanted to do something, and at the time it wasn't necessarily this. We didn't come here with this exact vision in mind. We had another idea, and as we all got into it together, that changed from that to here, and it continually evolved as we learned more and we saw more every month.
I was about to say
that the business changed, and everything from standing over there when the city was showing us property right across the road, a small parcel, to turning over, looking across here and seeing the 100 acres, and saying, you know what, we can see where this is headed. The Napa Valley style destination experience begin to plant the seed, and so nothing happens immediately overnight. It was evolutionary.
Mm-hmm. And so you had the idea, let's get into the bourbon, let's do this. I guess kind of talk us through those days too of dealing with the city, were there permits? Were they like, hey, was this like you saw this place and said yeah? Or I mean, how many other like locations were you scouting
funny.
to?
I'll first tell you, the city leadership was and is not only extremely supportive, they're one of our greatest allies. Just in building our business, it's very important to make sure you have a great relationship there. Kim Houston, who heads economic development, our current mayor, Judge Dean Watts, who is a county judge executive, and Bill Shekels, who was the former mayor at that time, all so supportive. But the funny story is, initially they didn't want to sell us this property. They had it slotted or thought out for a different business. And when you have an unknown entity coming in and wanting to buy 100 acres of your best city property, they're not always so sure, right? We're making all sorts of promises, and like a lot of communities across the country, they get burned with these. People come in, they make promises, they don't deliver, they buy things, and it doesn't materialize. So there's a lot of trust and a lot of faith that goes on, and I think that's one of the things that I am and we are as a team most proud of, is we have over-delivered here in Bardstown, and we've been able to do it with their support. It has been a team effort across the board with the state, with local government, and with the community members. We named the company after the town. I mean, we really believe in this place, and we believe in where it's going.
Yeah. So I know you're dying to talk about these collaborations. So let's talk about.
We'll talk. We can cover this. We can cover any subject you want to cover.
Well, I mean, like I said, you got a lot of knowledge on the business side of it. And I know it's not an easy feat to sit here and think like, okay, let's dive head in. Like, let's really go all in on this and really. I mean, let's be honest. Like, you look around here, there's not. You hit the nail on the head. A modern type of operation. There's no corners that have been cut here. There's heavy dollar investment, and I think and me personally, I really want this all to succeed too, because it's a different kind of experience than what you see really anywhere else on the trail.
And this is the funny thing, Kenny, is yes, there was a very significant investment made here, and there has been over time. But when you compare this investment with other similarly situated companies, we spent a fraction of what they spent, and that is a tremendous testament to our all-local construction team, Busick Construction, that has been with us for 6 years. And so I still conduct the same construction team meeting at 9 a.m. every Wednesday morning, and we've done it for 6 years with the same team that has built everything on this site, and we'll be building everything else. And so it's a small team. We're nimble. We make decisions immediately versus bringing in huge construction companies and giant engineering firms and architecture firms, and nobody's really understanding the business or distilling. And you get into spending a tremendous amount of money. It goes over, goes over budget. It goes over time. We have done this again for a fraction of what others have spent, and that's really an untold portion of the story. We couldn't have done this without Busick Construction and that team.
tell more of the story then, because I mean that's interesting, right? Because well, I mean, I guess on the other side of it too is you do get some more of that upfront capital because you can kind of pre-sell some of this sort of stuff, the contract distilling, the barrels and everything like that beforehand. It's not like me, if I wanted to build this over again, I would have to be like, oh, well, I got to wait 5-6 years until I have a product ready.
You can spend a lot of money creating a distillery, and especially one of this size. I mean, we are now, but we did it, and I think we did it very smartly in terms of we did it so we had a modular expansion, so we could go from 25,000 to 50,000, 130,000 barrels. We just didn't expect to do it in 2.5 years.
that was more like the 5 to 10 year plan.
Exactly, originally. But the ability to make those changes, to say, okay, we're going to expand now, and now we're going to expand again, and we're going to, at the same time, we're going to build a restaurant and a bar, and oh, wait a minute, before we're done doing that, we're going to start the visitor center, and we're going to start bottling. And that is only because we have this relationship with the construction team that lives with us. It's effectively an in-house construction team. We want to build something, it gets built. We have a problem, it gets fixed. We're able to do that. Now it's a blessing and a curse. You want to build something, it's like all of a sudden you start building something. But it is fun. Like the bocce ball court out there, that showed up a couple weeks ago. Yeah. That was Dan Calloway's idea. And then now we have a professional bocce ball court. The construction team goes out there and builds it overnight. So it's fun. It's great.
It's also good for
it's great.
Like employee satisfaction and stuff like that too, right? Like let's go have lunch, play a game of bocce, we'll go have a few meetings.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's right. No, so it is. But it is a very important part of the story of how we developed this so quickly. Because if you tried to do it with big conventional construction firms, it would be extremely hard. It'd take a long time, and it would cost a lot of money. And I won't point to examples, but you can find them out there in this industry where you have seen those problems.
So talk about, as well as I guess again, business side, what do you do to have employee retention, right? Because this is an industry that most of the time people look at account managers, they look at marketing professionals, they look at you have your culinary side of things, that it's a lot of turnover in some of this industry. What do you do to help keep that employee retention and make this a positive working environment?
So we do a tremendous amount there, and a lot of that work is led by Garnett Black, who is our Executive Vice President of Hospitality, but she also is our head of HR and our HR team here. That starts with the culture, and it starts with day one. We created our mission, vision, and values with our employees. We wrote them together. They participated in writing the employee guidelines with us. We did all of this together. Every employee, the first 18 barrels that rolled off the line at this company went to the employees. Most companies sell those for a lot of money. They went to the employees. Every employee that starts here gets a barrel of bourbon, right?
Yeah.
It's everything from the way you recognize, the way you reward, and the type of culture we create by bringing people's families together here too. And so, we emphasize all of those things, and that there's appropriate work-life balance, and that we support the community and, the charities and the organizations that the employees care about. So there are multiple different levels to this. And in a company that is growing so quickly, I think we spend a very significant amount of time focused on culture, and it's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, because I come from the tech background, I know most listeners know already, and so I venture out to Palo Alto and the Valley very often, and I get to see the ping pong tables and the arcade machines and the puzzle room and all this other kind of stuff that most companies around here would be like, well, flabbergasted at, right?
Right.
But you all built a bocce ball court, right? So you're trying to create a culture that makes you feel like you really want to be here, that it really helps, as I said, helps the employee retention, but really helps create that sort of positive environment that you feel good about coming here every day.
That's exactly right. And that's what we try very hard to do. And, you're running very different businesses too. You have the distilling side of the business, which is very different from the restaurant and the bar, which is different from the visitor's experience, which is different from brand sales and marketing. With our team that's out there in the marketplace now, we'll be in 6 states with the product by the end of the year, and that is an entirely different business and architecture, and one of the most important pieces of the business. And we have just this year now ventured into that. It's actually the part of the business that we know the best, ironically, because that was the business we were in before. We did a lot right, we did a lot wrong there, but we learned a tremendous amount, and it's one of the most exciting, one of the areas I am certainly most excited about with where we're headed is the brand.
All right, let's talk about the brand.
Okay, we'll talk about the brand.
I know I've been taking off the rails here and there.
There's a lot going on here.
It really is, and it's fascinating to talk about. We'll have to do a repeat of this here.
We'll do this, and we can keep talking.
Let's not wait 200 episodes to do another interview. Here.
Come back here. It's going to be a different place a year from now. So as it is 6 months from now.
So talk about the first 3 expressions that you all have put out. What did it take for the collaboration side of this to really make it happen? And I should mention that there was the collaboration series that kind of came out in this like square bottle.
Yes,
I think about a year or so ago.
Correct.
As well.
And we have I think 1 case of that left. But that sparked an idea, and so I'll tick back to that. But just to start, this is the Bardstown Bourbon Company that you see in front of you. This is our brand format. So this style bottle, and label, this modern presentation of a cohesive brand. And I think the challenge that you have with any young whiskey or bourbon company is how do you create and begin to create a brand when your whiskey that you're making here is still maturing in the warehouse and takes some time to mature. We don't cut corners. We don't plan on putting anything out that is young. We made a very early decision that we weren't going to put out a 6-month rye and a 1-year-old rye, that we were really going to wait and we were going to put it out when things were ready, because we're not under a rush. But in the meantime, we want to create really exciting things. So what's happening? What are the trends in the industry? Where are things going? Blending. Blending is a very exciting trend. It started in Scotch. It's been going on for a long, long time, but it really is becoming, more prominent now in bourbon. We wanted to be great at that. And what's unique about it? We got a distilling team, a beverage team, and a culinary team that are now all different flavor experts. In cocktail team is a beverage team is looking at for cocktail balance, culinary team is looking at for pairings, distilling team is looking at traditional methods, and they're blending for those reasons. So as we began to get into it, how do we bridge that gap? Well, we start with a couple of different expressions. Fusion, our Fusion series, tells the story of our blending capability, but begins to introduce our young bourbon in with a fully mature or older bourbon, and we put it all on the label. So we have 60% of this is 2-year-old bourbon. One is a 20% wheat, one is a 36% rye, blended with a 11.5-year-old Kentucky. So it's a Kentucky straight bourbon. And what you get is these bright notes from the younger bourbon with kind of the heavier, the notes from the older bourbon, and it makes a very complex blend where you would get much more of just a uniform product if you had just the 11.5-year-old. Here you're putting these really neat notes in. We went through this process, we went through 50 blind tastings with the distilling team, the culinary team, and the beverage team to arrive at this unique blend. It's Series 1 because it's going to adapt. Next year, it's 60-40. Maybe several months from now, it'll be 70-30, then 80-20. But you get to really kind of see how this is going to change as we move to our fully mature product. Mm-hmm. Then Discovery series. Discovery is our series that just is about making phenomenal blends using whiskey and bourbon that we didn't produce ourselves. So Discovery Series 1 is a blend of 4 Kentucky straight bourbons, the core of it being 11.5-year-old, but you've got some, sprinkled in 13-year-old, 10-year-old, and 5-year-old. And again, went through the same process with the 3 teams blending, and instead of having one singular product, they're adding these it's like little notes, like little spice notes into the blend so that you're getting something much more complex. And it's really neat. Again, went through multiple blind tastings with those teams to arrive at this.
Yeah.
And so,
that's what I think is what you're starting to find that a lot more prominent now is being able to get these older bourbons and then do this blending, and there's going to be varied amounts of the type of one product, the proof of another product, and really you're not going to find the same thing everywhere you go when you do this as well.
And it really makes it fun because the consumer is looking for interesting things. The consumer is open to innovation, which is where the collaborative series comes in, and you go back to the square bottle. So that idea started over dinner with Joe Herron from Copper and Kings, and I was sitting with him and we said, why don't we just start, this was 3-4 years ago, let's just start making some neat stuff. We had this glass. We actually owned inventories of 10.5-year-old MGP Indiana bourbon, 21% rye. So we took Muscat Mandell barrels and we selected the bourbon, finished this bourbon in the Muscat Mandell barrels for 18 months. We did the same with American brandy. It was a remarkable product, and it sparked this idea of, why don't we create a series, very limited edition, that tell the story of two great companies working together to produce a really unique product. So then we did the Pfeiffer Pavitt Reserve with Suzanne Pfeiffer Pavitt, great winemaker out of Napa Valley, 18-month finish in her Napa Valley cab barrels.
18 months is quite a long time. I mean, usually you hear about finishing, it's like 2 to 3 months, maybe a few
6
weeks. Yeah.
We're doing 18-month finish on every one of our products at a minimum. And it's a major investment, but you see a remarkable difference. You know, some people will say, oh, you know, the product's done, it's going to turn. We have never seen that yet. And Joe Herron is a huge, believer in this too. Just keep waiting. And so we have 10 more of these projects coming out. We've got 3 more with Copper and Kings. We have a really neat wine one coming out at the beginning of next year with Prisoner wine. So fabulous. That has been finishing now over 16 months. We have Great Armagnac House, a really neat rum one, again, where you tell the whole story of the two companies working together. And so these remarkably long finishes produce exceptional products. We actually go one step further too. We make sure that there is no degradation in the underlying quality of the wine or spirit. So for example, our wine casks, we ship on refrigerated trucking across the country. They never sit out in the heat, not even for a second. They come off the truck, they're filled. And so you prevent all degradation. So tremendous care in making them.
I was about to say, I was like, that's a investment right there. Just, I mean, I know what it takes to ship a barrel, across some state lines and everything like that. But now to put it in a refrigerated truck,
it's a lot more expensive. But at the end of the day, our goal is to create exceptional products, because if you make really good quality things, you're going to do great. I mean, we just firmly believe that. If you go take the extra steps to make an exceptional product with a really deep, authentic story, that's what many consumers are looking for these days. And we see it every day.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, it's good to see that this is where the brand's heading. You're doing a lot of good things here, too. When do you start seeing, because granted, I know you contract us to a lot of stuff, but you're also distilling for yourself.
Oh, yes, a lot.
Right? Oh, yeah, a lot for yourself. So what's the next phase of, taking Fusion to its own sort of thing?
You'll see that Fusion blend change, multiple times. And then what you're really looking at is about 2022, when our whiskey and bourbon is, really hitting that, about 5 to 6 year sweet spot. That's when you're going to start seeing it. And so you'll see rye and different bourbon mash bills. We've been doing a lot with malt whiskey. We have a lot of experimentation taking place too. So I think there's a lot of exciting things. Everything also, we're going to be launching a single barrel program here shortly for the public and for retailers, which is different because we do 40 different mash bills and we create so many different things. You're not limited as a consumer. You're going to come into our new barrel, our new
it's going to be quite the experience. And I don't know if we'll be able to make it through all these mash bills.
Exactly. So you go to the Rick House bar here, which is beautiful. I think we're going to take you out to see all these things today. But that structure, you have all glass looking into the warehouse. It's all lit, beautiful setting, an really intimate bar. And we're going to be able to provide the consumer, the retailer, with 5-6 different selections, different mash bills. You'll be able to try those barrels. You'll be able to secure them now. You'll wait several years. We'll bottle them for you. And you have a very different single barrel, pick program where you're not just limited to one type. Let's do a whole array of different things.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be impressive when that comes around, because
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, sign me up. We'll take a barrel.
It's great.
Yeah, no, I mean it's cool because there's definitely room of what you all are doing and pushing the envelope, not only just in regards of the whiskey production, the kitchen, the single barrel program, and one thing we even talked about was the vintage whiskey you all are doing as well. Like that's a part of what you do here too.
It is so exciting, and as part of the new visitors experience, we have a whiskey library that we have built. It's a little secret hidden library back there. You can do dinner for up to 10 people in it, and that's where we display and showcase our 400 bottles of vintage whiskey that date back to the late 1800s. We secured that and curated the collection with Fred Minnick. It's all for sale by the pour, and it is. We built that collection based on stories, and it wasn't based on volume. It was based on what are some really hard to get, very unique products that tell great stories. And so, some of them back there are absolutely incredible. And they further the whole discussion about whiskey and bourbon. So you come here, and again, we carry everything, but you have discussions like, why is the Old Crow chess set considered one of the best whiskeys made? Why is this 1929 Seagram's Canadian bourbon, which we have, which was before the statute went into place? Why was that at 8 years old so unbelievably rich? Why are some of these products so terrible?
Yeah, that's
right.
That's one fun thing about Dusty is exactly. You taste stuff and you're like, well, that was
horrible.
Very good.
and so, but it starts a conversation, and that's what this is all about. That's what the enjoyment of whiskey and bourbon and all of these things is all about a conversation. It's all about an experience. It's all about trying things, sharing things, talking about them, and that is at the core of who we are and what this place is about. We want all those conversations about all different things happening in here. It's not just about one brand or just about our brand. Our brand's great, and we will put it against anything. But there are also other wonderful producers out there, and it's a big community. And we want all those discussions taking place in here.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And, as we kind of wrap this up and start thinking about really what's on the horizon for you, like on the business side, like where do you kind of want to see this here? I mean, shit, you already talked about, hey, we're expanding every 6 months, but like, do you want to stop expanding? Like, is there a time when you're like, hey, like, all right, let's pump the brakes on this for a little bit?
Yeah, you're seeing the expansion is we're not anticipating further expansion in the distillery. So our focus, we have, upgrading, yes, improving our capabilities always, but we are now focused on building the brand, building the visitor's experience, and the elements around that, including bottling and the hotel. And so those are things that we are looking at right now, and we're really excited about. That's what's on the horizon, and making this not only a fully integrated production entity from whiskey production to storage to bottling, but also on the visitor's experience side, from restaurant to bar to lodging to being able to stay here in the heart of the bourbon capital of the world and make this a full destination experience.
Am I going to be able to use my Marriott rewards points here?
We don't know yet. We'll see.
So we'll leave it on that. David, I want to say thank you again.
Of course, it's our pleasure.
For coming on. Like I said, for Ryan and myself, I know Ryan's not here, but we always like to hear, we can always talk about like, oh, we can do this many barrels a day, blah, blah, blah. But, hearing it from a business aspect, I think is one crucial component that I think a lot of people need to understand as we start getting to this. And you really talked about it earlier about how you create the culture. And the culture is what builds everything around it at that point, and really what ultimately makes any venture successful.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to congratulate you guys because your growth has been as significant as ours. And up to 200 podcasts now. It's incredible, and you guys are the leading. And if for those of you who are out there, Kenny and his team, they are the leading bourbon podcast out there. Period. And so sign up, listen to it. We encourage it, and we love what they're doing and spreading the word here and helping educate everybody about what's happening in this industry. So congratulations to you.
Well, thank you, David. I didn't appreciate that. I always like a good pat on the shoulder.
That's true. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful to see that, rising tides is lifting all boats across all of this. And, we're all part of this, bourbon journey together.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we're going to be a part of it with you, and we're going to be excited to kind of see where this is going to go here in the next year or two. So going to be happy to see that. So before we kind of close up, if people want to give them the address. Where can they find it? I know you can type in Bardstown Bourbon Company in Google Maps, but
Bardstownbourbon.com, our website. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook. Check us out. Follow us. We've got a lot going on, particularly on Instagram. We've got an IGTV show that's going to be launching here shortly too. So we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff in here and broadcasting to the world what's going on in this facility, in real time.
That's what we need to do. We need to get the bourbon audience, continue to grow them, and really capture that mind share. So make sure you follow them. Make sure you follow us, Bourbon Pursuit, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you like what you hear, consider supporting us. Patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. And if you have any other ideas for shows, more sides of the business, more sides of distilling, a brand you want to know about, whatever it is, send us an email, team@bourbonpursuit.com. So, David, thank you once again for joining us.
Our pleasure.
And we'll see everybody next week.
Bourbon and Beyond. The world's biggest music and bourbon festival is even bigger. September 20th, 21st, and 22nd at Highland Festival Grounds at the Kentucky Expo in Louisville with Foo Fighters, Zach Brown Band, Robert Plant, and the sensational Space Shifters. Gerald Hall and John Oates, John Fogerty, ZZ Top, Leon Bridges, and more. Complete lineup of musical artists and celebrity chefs at bourbonandbeyond.com.